Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 7 of the 2-5 podcast. Today, I have a guest with me, Mr. David Mesquitic, piano player. I met him at Texas State when you were doing your master's, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show, David. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I was waiting for the applause.
Oh, yeah.
I was waiting.
Sorry, we just got Charlie here, just chilling.
Charlie, you know, do his job. No, I'm kidding. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we met at Texas State?
Yeah, I think I had finished my first year of my undergrad, and you were starting your master's there. So I had just recently got there when you were doing your stuff.
Right. Yeah, and it's been a while. It's been like, 4 years? About?
Yeah, it was funny. Every now and then, when I'm really bored, I'll scroll through Instagram stuff, and you gave me a few piano lessons back in the day.
Oh yeah, we had maybe 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, and I posted an F blues or something. And I think the date was 2016 on that, or something like that. So yeah, known you a bit.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think since then I got a teaching gig in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
so I moved up there and I've been working quite a bit, both as an educator, teaching music and performing with a vocalist in town, Christian Wiggs. Shout out to Christian Wiggs out there.
I know
Christian Taylor Wiggs. Anyhow, he does not like it when we say his middle name.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes I'll just call him Chris.
Okay.
Which he hates even more.
Well, now it's on the internet forever.
Forever. It is documented forever.
Yeah.
Probably something he'll probably shut down after that.
For real.
Yeah, after that name. Anyhow, yeah, I think I was after grad school, I ended up teaching and, been playing, and then I was in the process of applying for my DMA, the equivalent to a doctoral degree in jazz, and then I actually just released my album a couple of weeks ago.
There's the applause for that.
Oh, there you go.
It's a great
little
record,
delayed,
man.
but no. Yeah. So physical copies are available if you are interested in ordering, and it'll be through digital streaming. Any platform that you can imagine, iTunes, Apple Music, Google Play, Spotify, and so the release date will be August 1st. So if
okay.
Yeah, so if you're interested, go in there, type my name, make sure to spell my last name correctly, and you should find me. And so that is the goal.
Yeah, and I'll get some specifics from you later, and I'll make sure there's solid links in the description and everything, so people can find that.
Of course.
But the record's great, man. I got my physical copy. I think it came in Saturday or Sunday. The mail happened. It happened really quick.
Okay.
8 tracks. It's all standards and 1 original.
8 standard, 7 standards.
7 standards
and 1 original.
Yeah, really good stuff, man.
And there will be a single released in December.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
'Tis the season.
Okay, nice.
Anyhow, so yeah, we were in the studio for about 10 hours recording, 55 minutes worth of music.
Yeah.
And so 8 of those tracks are in the album, and the single will be released in sometime. I'm really planning on releasing it as soon as Thanksgiving is over, because as soon as Thanksgiving is over, everyone is in Christmas mode. You start hearing the Christmas music in the radio and everything.
Yeah.
So be tuned for that as well. So I'm pretty excited to be sharing all that with everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for listening to the album. Also, I think we talked about a CD giveaway for the 2-5 podcast. So I don't know what I don't know what parameters you have on that, but I will be donating a CD to you guys, cool. So that way you guys you can have have it to give away. I'm gonna put some instructions at the very end. I know you're on a little bit of a schedule today, so you're good.
I'll add in a little recorded segment at the very end. So you have to listen to the whole thing, or at least fast forward to the end to know how to get into the contest for the giveaway. But thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
I think it's good for everyone.
Of course.
Yeah, the great CD. The sound is really clear on it. My car doesn't have the world's best speakers, but I think it has pretty good speakers. I've been listening to it to and from work, and I can really clearly hear all the instruments. The really good thing is all the voices are clear enough to where you can hear the interaction.
Oh, too. Of course.
That's kind of I don't know. Sometime within grad school, I feel like my ears have elevated to hearing how musicians interact on records, and that's something I'm always trying to look out for, especially live and everything. But I can really hear you guys interacting, and the drummer really is an interactive player.
Oh my gosh,
he's great.
Talking about the personnel on this album, man, these guys are some swinging dudes.
Yeah.
I did all the arranging for all the tunes. And so I've always been, I have a classical trombone degree in my undergrad. So I was taking some composition lessons, and I've written some like piano sonatas for trombone and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, some arrangements for like, the basketball bands, pet bands. I think they call them pet bands.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that the arranging composer side of me definitely shows a lot here. But yeah, anyways, we have Ben Trish on the bass, we have Fabio Augustinus on drums. We have Christian Wiggs on vocals, Matthew Maldonado on the tenor saxophone. Charlie Kramsky is the one who did the engineering and mixing. Fabulous job. Jerry Tubb, he did the mastering. And we recorded all this at 12th Street Sounds. Go figure, 12th Street in Austin.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing project. It was a lot of work, and talking about the interaction. My goal was to make this as organic as possible.
Yeah. But
still in a very like arranged way. But we weren't thinking of the arranging. It just happened, if that makes sense. And so we worked with a framework, which was the song, and then we just kind of let it be as it was.
Yeah. I think one of the tracks that highlights your arranging the most, in my opinion, is Wave.
Oh, right.
What you did on Wave. I really love that intro, and you threw in a little Waltz for Debbie in the bridge.
Oh,
right?
I love Bill, yes.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. And, actually, funny story about Wave. It was a Monday morning, and, I was a teacher for 2 years, so it was like right in the middle of June. And I was in the middle of like my summer vacation mode, some sandals, and as comfy as possible. And I mean, this is gonna sound very cliche of like a musician saying like, "Oh, I heard music in my head," but really, I was like, man, I'm really digging something, and I was in a car, so it's like I didn't have my melodica. Don't ever drive and play melodica; it is very dangerous. I do not encourage it. Anyway, so I stopped by at Opa Coffee Shop in Austin. And I was playing around with like the Sibelius sounds on my keyboard because I was like, man, there's a very specific rhythm I want as the intro. And so without a keyboard or melodica, I was able to kind of figure out, like, make educated guesses on like, oh, maybe these are the chords, maybe this is the rhythm that I'm hearing. And so I wrote the whole arrangement in 2 hours. And so at the Opa Coffee Shop, and it happened instantly, and it's rare when things like that happen, and that probably happens, once every 3-4 years.
Yeah, but, and that's the arrangement.
That's the arrangement. Yeah, I didn't change anything about it.
Cool.
And so in the process, we had a rehearsal, and like there was one thing where Fabio, the drummer, he's like, oh, it'd be cool if we just kind of tweak this little thing. And so the album was like a big collaborative effort of the three of us. Yeah. And so we just kind of we played to each other's strengths. Yeah. And so it was a great it was a great time with them, and I was really excited for working with these musicians, and so it was a great experience with that. Cool.
Well, yeah, great record. I really appreciate how thematic you are with your playing.
Okay. Oh, thank
you. I'm really trying to, I was really listening to your, I was listening to the whole record, but I was really trying to listen to your solo since we were going to meet up and talk about everything. Of course. And, of course, you hit resolutions and everything, the stuff you're supposed to do or whatever, but I found that in a lot of your solos, and this is, I guess this sticks out to me because this is something I'm trying to start doing. Okay. But you'll play, a 3, 4, 5 note theme or whatever, and instead of just ignoring it, you develop it. You'll do like the AABA thing with it. You'll play it, answer it, vary it, or something like that. Right. And I'm not trying to like put you in a box or break it down, but I really appreciate that you stick with an idea rather than think, oh, well, next chord, time to play. Those are kind of my pitfalls. I'll play something that could have been a theme, but I'm so stuck in the changes that I don't follow through with it, and I just move on. So yeah. I just thought that was cool.
And I think we all fall guilty of it. Anyone who's in their improvisational journey, jazz journey, we all fall in those things where we hear something and we want to let it continue to happen, but then it's like either our mind or like our technical ability or our skill level, or maybe our ears don't hear it develop, and it's like, oh, chucks, But anyways, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's something I do try to work with a lot, is getting like an idea. And I mean, an idea can be one measure idea, which is 4 or 5 notes, a 2 measure idea, 4 measure idea, and really expand that and kind of let it grow and develop. And so at the end of the day, there's no wrong way of creating a good solo, because it's all it's hard to quantify creativity. How do you quantify, how do you put a number to how creative one is? So, but the one of the things that I am aware that I do have control over is my practice. And so I try to be very deliberate of being as motivic and thematic as possible in my playing. And I feel like that's just been an accumulation of like my influences. A lot of my influences kind of have that same idea of being thematic when they're playing, or kind of carrying an idea. To name a few, and a lot of people will already know, Bill Evans is like my top guy, and I love Bill. And I have I don't want to say I have a personal association with him, because I've never met him, but he was teaching a student named Andy Laverne back in the late 70s, who's played with who's done some albums with Stan Getz, Chick Corea, and he's done a couple of gigs with like Frank Sinatra. He hates it when people bring that up, but I'm still bringing it up because it's funny, because to a non-musical listener, when you hear Frank Sinatra and you hear someone that played, it's like that there's already like it's like, oh, this guy must know his stuff. Anyway, so I've gone to New York. He lives in north of Manhattan, and so I've gone a couple of times to New York, probably like 2 or 3 times, to go get lessons from him in person. And I was going to go study with him after my master's degree, but the money was not there. So I was like, I am not gonna put my life in debt. Astronomically. Anyway, so he knew Bill Evans real personally. He would sit next to him on his piano in his apartment, and Bill Evans would play, and he'd be like, all right, play something in that style. And he was like, I don't know what to do. And he actually comes he actually has a bachelor in classical piano from Juilliard. So he was a classical guy and just wanted to start learning jazz in his early 20s. And he picked it up really fast. I mean, look at his teacher. Anyway, so he does all the James Abersol camps. He does all that stuff, and so he's up there. He has lots of great books, and so he actually has the original lead sheets that Bill Evans would write of like Waltz for Debbie, Time Remembered, very early. He would write it. Bill Evans would like write these little lead sheets during the breaks for his trio. And so when he passed away, his family gave him all his original manuscript writing of his tunes. And so he scanned them and sent them to me. And so I have like Bill, the original, like his handwriting of Waltz for Debbie or Time Remembered, and so it's great. But Bill Evans is a big one. Keith Jarrett is one of my top guys, influences that I have. Oscar Peterson, I love getting bluesy on that stuff. And so I mean, I don't want to say those are the only 3 I listen to, but because I listen to so many, and I love to name so many more. It's like Tommy Flanagan, and there's Gene Harris who played with the Ray Brown Trio. And so a lot of contemporary guys like everyone, Cora Henry, Robert Glasper. And so there's so many pianists to listen out there, but the whole thematic playing thing is something that I try to be very clear about. And the reason why I do that is because from my approach is I'm telling the story. When you're improvising, you want to think more bigger picture rather than the tree. You want to think more of the forest, right? So I try to be very thematic in that way, where I'm telling a story, and the notes represent a theme, and so if you think about it as a book, it's like your chapter 1, chapter 2, and then you start developing, and there's a climax and then a resolution. But being thematic is a big thing that I try to be very deliberate about. Sometimes it comes out, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, trial and error. But anyways, thanks for noticing that. I appreciate that.
It's cool stuff. So you mentioned that you have your undergrad was in trombone.
I did, yes.
So how did you end up recording a piano record and now going to get your DMA in piano?
Well, it was kind of a messy process. I picked up, if anyone that lives in Texas, band is a huge deal. It's like,
yes,
it's probably just as big as football.
You grew up in Texas?
I grew up in Texas,
okay.
Born and raised. Anyways, yeah, so I did trombone middle school. I was going to quit in 6th grade because I was like, I am so bad at this. And anyways, I moved to a different school district, and their band program was really good. And I feel like when you just surround yourself with better players, it just it almost gets, you're forced by nature to get better and kind of stay at their level.
Well, there's that saying, like, you never want to be the best musician in a band because of that, like, that rising to the occasion thing that people do.
Of course. And so, I did that. My freshman year in high school, I started when I think you're like 14, 15. I started picking up piano at church by ear. So I picked up piano at the church, and it was one of those things where it's like a small youth group, and they're like, oh, we need a piano player, and I was like, I want to learn how to play piano, and they almost saw it as not that everyone did, but it was kind of almost comical. It's like, oh, David's gonna learn piano. He's gonna attempt to learn piano. And so my mom bought me, this Yamaha keyboard from a pawn shop with no music stand. Like, I would put it on top of my bed and just play. Yeah. And I think at the time, that's when YouTube was kind of, picking up, and people were uploading videos on YouTube. And so a lot of it was just, YouTube was my teacher. I would go to YouTube and I would watch piano players play, covers of songs, just pop songs or church songs. And I would just replay like every 5 seconds of the video and just kind of copy their gestures. And so going into my undergrad, I pursued in trombone because I didn't have chops to pursue a classical piano degree, which is what I wanted originally. But I just, I was looking at auditions, and I was like, man, I do not know Mozart. I do not know. I don't have the technical ability to play all 12 major scales at quarter note 150. Like, I cannot do that. And so, because it was all by ear. And so, in that process, I came from like a very heavy gospel influenced church. And so that's where a lot of the jazz kind of, they're all, it all intertwines at the end. And so I was picking that up on the side, but getting a trombone classical degree. And so in the process, like, I think they make you take some like piano classes, where like, basic piano classes for any instrument that you're studying, just so that you can have some sort of proficiency on the piano. Yeah. And so, I knew how to play piano, but that's where I kind of learned how to read the notes on, like the staff. And so from there, it just kind of, took off. I would make an initiative to just like read, like little simple etudes of piano every day before I would practice trombone. Which probably wasn't the smartest thing as a trombone major, but anyways,
I'd say it worked out.
and in that, I was taking like composition lessons, and in my very last year, I took 1 semester of applied piano. There was a visiting piano professor. She was a Steinway & Sons piano artist, and she needed students because she was not going to have enough, I guess, money to make at the university. Anyways, I ended up. She was like, I'll take you in, I don't care. And all we worked on the whole semester was just fundamentals. And then she threw at me like a Beethoven and a Chopin and a Gershwin piece. I was like, lady, I cannot read music. Like, I cannot read. I could, but it's going to take me months to learn this. Right. She's like, oh no, you can do it. I'm like, oh. Anyways, that was the 1 semester I had some training, and that really opened up my ears and my mind to just how the mechanics of a piano works, because every instrument in itself has its own, pros and cons to it. Sometimes more cons than anything, but how to work with the instrument. And going into my master's, I was realizing I could support myself as a pianist to some extent. Skill-wise, and so I was like, let me just make it a long shot and audition on piano for a jazz degree. And so I auditioned at a couple of schools, and I was fortunate enough to get into Texas State, and I was fortunate enough also to get an assistantship, which was really nice. I was not expecting that. And so that's how it ended up happening, and it was really just a lot of trial and error with the whole piano thing, and a lot of guidance of classical instructors during that 1 semester where I had training, and it just kind of took off from there. I was seriously not even expecting to like do piano for a living at all.
Yeah.
My initial plan was to just graduate my undergrad, be a band director, live the dream, you know.
Yeah.
No, yeah, just be a band director, teach brass at a high school, middle school, and just take it from there.
Right.
And then, you know, kind of going out of my comfort zone, I was like, you know, is that the way I think of it is, do I see myself, you know, teach in whatever profession you do I see myself doing this for the next 20, 30 years, you know, until retirement, for the 40, 50 hours a week? That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was thinking about it. I was like, you know, it does not hurt to audition for a master's in jazz piano. Yeah. So that long shot came a long way. And I mean, I was fortunate enough to even record an album. And so one of many to come. And considering it's the first album, I was pleased with the results. And
that's great.
And so, yeah, that's how it came about. I mean, it was a lot of it was just a lot of ear training at the church. The church really humbled me in that, you know, I knew my basic chords, and they would just sing, and I had to follow them, and I had to find chords that fit their notes. And
that's scary.
It is really scary. It is very humbling too.
Well, I mean, but to have that as your beginning, I mean, I'm sure that paid off really well, especially once you started studying jazz. Like,
it did pay off. You know, what helped a lot was, you know, I feel like people learn music backwards. You know, music's a language, and so you know, you want to pick up like phrases and cliches of like certain styles, genres, and that's probably more effective than, you know, going and like starting on page 1 of like the theory book. And not to say theory's bad, but I feel theory is important in where in that it helps put labels to things that you know, we might not know.
It's like grammar,
right,
for the language.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, I love theory. I mean, I consider myself a big theory nerd. I love, you know, just analyzing form and all that, everything that goes into that. But at the end of the day, it's like you can be a theory wizard, but you know, if your goal is to be a performer, right, and you can't replicate that on your instrument or your voice, then, you know, there might be some sort of disconnect there. Yeah. But I mean, if your goal is to be a theory professor, then, you know, that's, you know, you got to have some. I feel like at the end of the day, it's just whatever you work towards too. And so, you know, if you're gonna do theory, do it well. If you're gonna play jazz, do it well. And so,
and you, I mean, especially for jazz, you kind of have to hit it from all angles. Where, you know, ear training, transcription, and stuff is incredibly important. But you also, you know, you need to know how that's organized.
Right.
And this is kind of something I was kind of wanting to ask you about. So, I tend to ignore transcription because I don't feel like my ears are that great, and obviously I'm not doing myself any favors by ignoring it. But sometimes when I do transcribe something successfully and I feel really good about it and I learn it and I can play it with a record, or even something like learning something in 12 keys, I feel like it doesn't necessarily pay off for me unless I know the logic behind what that artist was thinking, you know? So there wasn't even a question in that. I guess, what are your thoughts on like transcription, learning 7/12 keys versus learning how the artist came up with that and implementing it?
Cool. Or that's a deep question.
Sorry.
That's going to cost you something. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'll send you my Venmo in a little bit.
Yeah, there we go.
Just kidding.
There we go.
No, you know what? That is a really deep question in that I asked the teacher that. I was like, what is he thinking in this transcription or in this, I guess in this performance? And he laughs, and I'm like, was that a stupid question? He's like, it's almost impossible to tell what he's thinking.
Right.
You know, it's hard to tell what he's thinking at that moment, because listening back to my album, I was, you know, I try to put myself in like a position where like if I were to try to analyze myself and try to think what was I thinking at that moment, I was not thinking anything. It was just automation, you know, just muscle memory and listening. But I mean, in your case, well, I guess to answer like the first question, I feel like to me transcription is, you know, I feel like the bread and butter of learning anything. You know, a child growing up doesn't know the difference between English, Spanish, you know, languages. Right. They just pick up on phrases and cliches that parents say, you know, mom, dad, food, water, things like that. I feel like it's the same way with jazz, you know. Musicians pick up a lick, and that's the equivalent to maybe us going to like China and learning Mandarin,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, we want to be in the vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's equivalent to a jazz musician wanting to be in the vibe of like soloing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Picking up licks and vocabulary. And it's like, the first phrase we'll probably pick up is something equivalent to like, hey man, what's up? And
Yeah.
we'll learn that phrase, and that's the equivalent to maybe like, a one bar idea in jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, I feel like you just start to develop, like start connecting these words or these licks, and you make sentences, and these sentences, create thoughts, and then these sentences after a while create paragraphs, and then
Right.
you just create this whole story that you're trying to tell, going back to the whole telling the story and
So-
improvising. And so I believe transcribing is just vital in everything.
Okay.
I feel like just too much of anything in general, I feel like in general life, too much of anything can just sometimes be unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm sure I'm saying that kind of throwing it out there pretty deep, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like everything is just in relation to the person and, finding a good balance. But one of the goals that I actually have for this next month is to transcribe a little bit every day.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's 2 seconds, whether it's, one measure. And I feel you just open up your ears to so many more different things.
That's smart.
And, it's instead of trying to transcribe a whole solo, which I do not discourage, like, please go transcribe solos and,
Yeah.
sonatas, do whatever you want. But the fact that you're just constantly working on the ear and picking up shapes is, I feel like, really important, because when you're in the bandstand playing with a group, there's going to be things that you might be picking up, might not be picking up, and the more you transcribe, the more your ears open up to certain things that musicians are doing. And elaborating more on the transcription, sometimes we all fall guilty of transcribing like a certain type of player all the time, or a certain type of maybe these two musicians kind of have the same school of thought, and maybe you're just so comfortable transcribing them because you kind of already know their go-tos of where they're going to go. Like, oh, I think, and then you can already make educated guesses like, oh, this note is probably, he might want to go here.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm trying to do is transcribe a little bit of just opposite spectrums of musicians. Like, transcribe like one measure of a Corey Henry solo.
Mm-hmm.
Like just one measure, because that's enough language to take through all 12 keys, right?
Yeah.
And so, I will transcribe one measure, maybe 2 measures. If I'm feeling really good, 4 measures, But anyhow, I would transcribe that. But then I would go back and transcribe some Fats Waller, like early jazz. And I feel like as a jazz musician, especially now, modern days, it is important to have like your unique sound and like build your craft. But I feel like a lot of the gigs I've gotten was because I can just play the style, play the vibe, and that's something I learned a lot about with my teacher. Shout out to Russell Haight out there. And so I was taking lessons with him in grad school, and one of the things he always talked about was just play, honor the music and play to the style. Of course, there's times when to just kind of be creative and be innovative in that. But most cases when in my case, when I'm working with singers, they always have a certain vibe in mind. Chet Baker, Sarah Ray Vaughan or Frank Sinatra. These just these different vibes. And so sometimes when they call out a tune, I will ask them, what vibe do you want on this? And so they'll be like, oh, just kind of give me like a stride. Fats Waller vibe. And so if you do that, you need to know certain gadgets that he does and he plays to kind of fit that vibe. I mean, obviously you're not going to hit it 100%, or you might. I don't know. Kudos to the guys who can do that, but I can't. And so you want to have enough just knowledge to kind of recreate that sound or that vibe, or just kind of build on top of that vibe. Same thing, if all is Fats Waller, but you can't play Inner Urge or Giant Steps, that language that you're learning with Fats Waller isn't going to fit. Yeah. It can fit probably, but there's like certain patterns that Joe Henderson and Coltrane use that you almost got to pick up on their language. And so I feel transcribing is important in that you want to transcribe as much as possible. I mean, of course, given the time that you have, to just kind of pick up on the general ideas of each player. Like, Joe Henderson goes for this thing. He's into these shapes. Yeah. Coltrane, he plays very inside, but he has these long lines. Stan Getz, very melodic and beautiful playing.
Yeah.
And so I guess picking up just like on the big things of each player helps when you're transcribing, because at that point it's like you kind of already know more or less their go-tos on certain things. You might not be a master at them unless that's your goal, to be like a scholar on Stan Getz.
Right.
But for the most part, yeah, I feel transcribing to me is important, because that's what helped me pick up certain like vibes and language of certain players. And so to me, that's how I use transcribing for. I mean, there's so many other ways to use it, but...
And do you think, from all the transcription you've done, the logic of how to turn those things and make them your own, that just came from just doing enough of it? Like, you just kind of, your brain just kind of did it.
I feel like a lot of it is, I have like a two-step process, or it's not really a two-step process, but I always teach my students in that question, like, always imitate and then innovate.
Yeah.
And so, you want to imitate and pay tribute to, the people who have contributed to jazz and have had such a profound impact. But, you just don't want to be stuck there. You want to innovate. You want to contribute something yourself to, to the jazz world, or to the music world in general. And so I will, if one of the things I like to do a lot is learn maybe like a 2-bar phrase, 4-bar phrase, for example, like a Keith Jarrett, 2 4-bar phrase. And I will, once I learn that, I will imitate that as much as I can and go back to a bunch of tunes and try to just throw that in there, just force it in there, because that's what your practice is. You're thinking in your practice. So you want to be very intentional about how you practice. And so one of the ways I do that is by forcing myself to fit exactly what I transcribe into into tunes, like Autumn Leaves, whatever standard, blues.
Blues.
And then I would work that out to where I could get it comfortably. And then I would just kind of tweak it around, or maybe see what works, maybe tweak some notes, or maybe like, I hear it go this way, or like, maybe I'm not hearing it go this way. Let me force the line to go this way. That way I can like, make it sound like it's part of my playing, not just like David
copy
and paste, lick, and then back to my solo.
That's the biggest problem I have, is when I do learn something in 12 keys, I feel like I never end up actually playing it because I don't feel like it's coming from me.
Right.
Like it's just not even, I'm not even aware of it or something. So,
yeah.
But I don't think I've done enough of actually, like you said, forcing it. I think I learn it in 12 keys and then I leave it. I should probably be actually trying to putting it in somewhere, and that'll probably wire my brain of the logic behind it and how to make it my own and stuff like that.
Yeah. And there is a saying that Bill Evans said, it's like, it's better to learn one song in 12 keys than to learn, 12 different songs in 12 different keys. And I mean, it's you don't want to be, you can't be literal with it, but it's just proving a point. It's like, you want to be, I'd rather hear someone master, slam down a great Have You Met Miss Jones in all 12 keys than, painfully struggle to play 12 different songs for me. That to me, that shows a lot more discipline, power,
right,
in just the overall, in just who they are overall. But anyways, that's that's a little bit of my take on the transcription process, or just the transcribing process.
Cool. So you're going to school in the fall.
I am.
In Colorado. Is it North?
It's the University of Northern Colorado.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So UNC.
UNC.
There's also another school there in Boulder. And so.
How did all that go? Like, tell me about that process.
Oh man, it was a very painful process financially. No, I'm kidding. No. So the process was, it took a while in that you just got to have a lot of documentation with you at hand, because when anyone applies to a doctoral degree, or specifically like a DMA, you got to fill the application out. And that application itself just takes, you do that like around November. I think deadline's December 1st, so you do it around that early time. But yeah, a lot of the stuff they ask for in that application is, like examples of scholarly writing, so like papers that you've written for jazz, like history, you know, jazz pedagogy, stuff like that. They want to see your writing on that. They also, a lot of schools require you to upload, like, you know, 40 minutes of playing material that you have, you know, whether it be like in a recital or solo. They require X amount. Some schools require like an hour 30, like, you know, 90 minutes of live playing. That's a whole recital. I mean, no thank you, you know. But anyways, yeah, so most schools for the most part just they want to hear something. So I will like typically have, you know, some go-tos that I recorded with like a trio, and I will send them that. And the application for the most part is kind of like a pre-screening for them, just to kind of see, you know, like who's worth the invite for a live audition. So that in itself, the stressful part about the application process is doing multiple schools. I applied to 4 schools, and I actually withdrew my application from one of them because I did not want to live in negative 30-degree weather. Yeah. And so I was like, that is not my nature. Yeah. I was born and raised in Texas. Yeah. And so anyways, I found out on my audition day, I was auditioning to a school in Illinois, and the audition was in mid-January, which is just a horrible time to go. That's during that cold. Time. And it was like negative 15, and it was a week before the audition, the live audition. And I was like, I withdrew my application immediately. I was like, I am not going to go in negative 15-degree weather. Anyway, so yeah, I applied to a couple of schools. The University of Northern Colorado was one of them. And, you know, did you want me to talk about like the audition process or
how was it?
Yeah. Like, so, I mean, it was, I mean, I think it'd be more effective to probably talk about, you know, some ways of like preparing, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone listening is wanting to do this, but, you know, a heads up for whoever's listening might be
for
great.
Sure. But yeah, the audition process, and they're typically the same for the most part, but, you know, I would always check with the school regarding audition requirements, because in your mind, you might think you prepared like an awesome audition, but maybe that's not what they're looking for. And so specifically for jazz, you know, you have to go to each website and see what they're looking for. And I would email you know, if I guess whatever your applied instrument is, I would email that professor, and, you know, don't be afraid to ask them questions. That's their job, right? And so
and it probably makes a better impression to actually reach out before the audition day.
Oh, of course.
Already make that contact before the day of.
And actually, the University of Northern Colorado, that was my last audition of the 4. And, you know, I'm sure most people can relate. You know, when you've done multiple schools, your last audition's kind of, you know, you just want to get it over with. Yeah. Like, you're not even really thinking about it. You're just excited to get it over with. And so that was me. So I flew into Greeley, and on the day of the audition, they were running behind time, which was kind of stressful for me, because I've always, you know, like, I like to be on time, but they were running like 30 minutes behind time.
That's tough.
I know. And then, like, you know, the nerves kick in a little bit when you're like waiting outside.
You're just like sitting in your nerves.
Right. And you're, you know, you're just sitting there with like all these other guys that are auditioning for the same spot as you. And, you know, it's like, you try to make friendly conversation, but deep down inside, you know,
well, it's competition
like,
at the end of it.
It's competition. Yeah. It's like, you know, oh, what are you playing? And I was like, oh, I'm just playing, you know, and I try not to tell them exactly what I was playing. I was like, oh, I'm playing a blues and a waltz. But, you know, just like those little Holly conversations before the audition. Yeah. Anyways, I went inside the audition room, and they did have, like, it was supposed to be an interview, sight reading, and the performance part of it. But since they were running behind time, they just got me straight into the playing. They're like, we just want to get straight into playing. So, yeah, that's what he got into. And so, anyways, I played 3 tunes. And, you know, they don't expect you to play the whole thing. They just kind of cut you off in the middle. And so, to me, I couldn't tell if that was a good or bad sign.
That's tough, yeah.
And, you know, to make it even, I guess, not to scare myself a little more at that moment, my audition was like only 12 minutes long.
Oh, man.
I know.
How are you supposed to present yourself in 12 minutes?
I know. It was crazy. Because, I mean, one, they were running behind time, but I was like, this either is going really good or really bad. And it's like, it's so hard to tell the vibe, because you walk into a room and like the piano bench is broken, so they have to stack 2 chairs, which is really uncomfortable for me. And I just didn't like that part to begin with. But one of the things I did personally was I took arrangements. I prepared, but they weren't crazy, in 5/8, 13/8 or like meters. Like it was just typical straight ahead standards that I just did like a quick little arrangement of, for the audition. And I feel like that showed to them, kind of just, it was like, I don't know, just more of a preparation level than other students, like, oh, let's go Billy's Bounce and then we'll count it off.
Right.
And so the nice part was that the faculty were accompanying me. So the jazz drummer professor was playing drums in my audition, and the bass player was that's on faculty was playing as well. And I feel bad for not remembering their names at the moment, but anyways, they were there playing for me, and they were reading my charts, which is really fun. And so I feel like at the end of the day, they just kind of want to get a vibe of how you present yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
And then there was supposed to be some sight reading. We didn't get to that. And then right. But anyways, that ended up happening. And the last thing they asked me was, so why a jazz degree? And I mean, I was kind of left a little speechless. I was like, I mean, that's... I don't think I should be... I did not prepare for that question.
It would be kind of self-evident.
Right. I was like, I mean, I've gone this far, but I mean, I told him, like, I want to pursue a career in teaching in academia, in higher academia. And, the only way to do that is to have a doctoral degree. I didn't word it like that, but, I mean, that's pretty much the goal. I mean, most people who get their PhD, DMA in jazz, they want to have a job at a university for the most part, right? Some can use it to expand their knowledge. It's funny because there's a podcast, the You'll Hear It podcast, and Peter was like, I didn't even know they had jazz degrees.
I think I heard that one.
And it kind of hurt me. I was like, ouch! Like I've been working on this, and
jazz education is like so evolved and different from like the people we listened to when they were our age.
Oh, for sure.
It's like it wasn't existent back then.
Oh no, I mean like jazz education just became. Like I believe in the 1950s, like UNT was probably the first, program to like offer a jazz degree. Yeah. But anyhow, the audition went great. As soon as I finished, I was left a little speechless because I didn't know what to think of the audition. But I felt reassurance when I left the room, and then the piano professor, who was also the head of the jazz department, came up to me, and I was already walking out the windows. Whoa, I was really mad. No, I was walking out the door, and he kind of like was running to like chase me to get me, and he introduced himself to me, which was really nice, and he showed me around the music school.
Oh, okay, that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, it was a pretty good sign, and so I felt really good about that. But anyways, I got an acceptance letter that later, like 2 days, the next business day, so on Monday.
Great.
Which is really nice. And so I'm really excited to venture out into a new part of my life and journey. And so that process was it's, I feel like auditions are so hard to just tell where a certain person is at.
Well, they're so forced,
Right.
Like, I'm sure you probably play completely different at a gig than you would at that kind of stressful audition.
I feel like auditions are like, all right, you're a monkey, and like, you're doing a little clapping with the cymbals and then leave.
It's kind of like juries in a way.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like, you want to make it feel organic, but they're also listening to every part of your playing. Yeah. And it's like,
you have to shine at that moment.
And you almost have to just kind of, ignore that and just kind of just think about the music at that moment. But the audition, like, I guess some tips, that I probably would give to people that are auditioning, not even to a PhD, just to like any schools, whether it's like classical or jazz. It's like, play at your own level. I mean, that's one of the things that I feel like a lot of players, they try to play stuff that is outside of like their skill level, and to me, labored playing is always kind of painful to listen to.
Like, play what you're able to well,
right,
as opposed to fumbling through.
And it's humbling because sometimes what you can play naturally isn't maybe what you think is as I don't know, isn't maybe what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might be thinking you're playing better, but you're actually playing something really different.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would definitely say, and which is why I took standards that were, you know, pretty common, but that had my own twist to them. Which kind of leads to my next point, is like, be prepared. You know, be prepared. Like, some schools ask for like 30-minute, and there was a school where I auditioned to, where we had like a 30-minute interview, and then like it was 30 minutes of playing. It was a lot. You know, technical exercises, getting comfortable with your instrument, sight reading, that's a big part also.
Yeah.
Ear training. You know, there's some schools do a lot of ear training. You know, the performance aspect of it, it's like, you know, getting your music down, all that stuff. And then even aesthetics, the way you look. Mm-hmm. You know, that's probably just as important as everything.
Well, first impression. I mean,
oh, of course.
Like, you're auditioning, like in your case, you're auditioning for the highest level of education. You don't want to show up in flip-flops, or
right.
You know, like you want to look the part. You want to be desirable for them, because, you know, if a school spits out someone with a DMA, you want to make sure that person with that DMA is like representing. You know?
Right, exactly. And yeah, I think like my biggest thing I would probably give to everyone is, you know, listen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and adapt, because that's what I had to do. You know, and I think the big thing, you know, is just listening. You know, when you, I feel listening answers a lot of the questions. And there was a teacher at Texas State that I was like, man, I don't know what to play. Like, you know, when the singer's doing this, and he's like, just listen. I'm like, that is not a concrete answer. Like, I need more specifics. Like, give me the details of the listen. Mm-hmm. He's like, just listen. And that is all that he would say. And it was really frustrating for me, because it was easy for him to say, because he had the experience and the background knowledge to do that. But I was in the process of still, you know, like, inquiring about those things. And I mean, I still do, but listening, I mean, it's like, it's such an easy word to say, but it's so hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Well, your ears know everything. They'll tell you everything, and they can teach you everything, but it's so hard to follow them in the moment, you know, and trust them.
Right.
So,
but anyways, yeah, I mean, the audition went pretty well for the most part. You know, my first audition of the 4, I was pretty nervous about, just because, you know, it's your first audition.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you get nervous, and that's pretty normal, but, you know, you also want to practice for your audition. So it's like, you know, set up mock auditions, set up interviews, or, you know, set up like your own interviews, your own mock auditions, and try to get in that vibe. You know, imagine yourself with a room full of professors surrounding you, mm-hmm. which is probably most likely what will happen.
Yeah.
And that way you can just kind of get those nerves out and kind of know what it's going to feel like at that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think I would just say, you know, be prepared, listen, and adapt to what they're gonna throw at you, because you can't dodge it. You just got to take it.
Yeah. Great. How are we doing on time?
We're doing pretty good. Yeah, we can do a couple more minutes.
Cool. All right. I guess I have a couple of things I wanted to ask you about, and I guess I'll just let you pick which one you're curious with. So I guess which one do you want to talk about more? I'm curious about how you arrange, but I'm also curious about how you book gigs and organize that side of your playing in life.
Okay. Let's those are both good. I'll let you pick.
Let's go with arranging, actually. I think I've talked about gigs with everyone on the show.
Okay.
But I haven't really talked about arranging before.
Okay,
and that's
cool.
actually a class I'm taking in the fall, and something I want to
jazz arranging is such a great class.
With Hayden, of course. So.
Oh, yeah, you're going to love it.
So what's your... I don't even really know what to ask other than just... How do you arrange? What's your process for that?
You just let it flow, bro. No, I'm kidding. No.
Just listen.
just listen like that. No, honestly, I feel a lot of like my arranging comes from just my classical experience. Mm-hmm. That's not to say my arranging sounds classical, but one of my thoughts is, you know, to me, jazz is like a continuation of classical music. In my thought, I know there's some other jazz pianists that kind of think that same way, but to me, it's like good music is good music. You know, if you strip down like all the synthesizers and all the sounds, it's like just good music is going to be good music. And honestly, that's really what it boils down to, because there's 12 notes on the piano, and it's like how you arrange them and how you group them and how you approach like the harmonic, the melodic, and the rhythmic aspect of the music defines a genre. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, to me, just good music is good music. I consider myself like an omnivore of just different genres.
I like that.
Because, I love listening to everything. I love a little bit of this, I love a little bit of that. And, to me, it's like if it's intentional, if it's very purposeful, then it's good music. And so, because it's all sound at the end of the day.
Right.
It's the same sound. It's just grouped differently. Anyways, so my arranging comes just from my knowledge of just taking composition lessons. And one of the biggest things I've learned about arranging, bigger picture, is always the same, never the same way. So when I arrange things, you want to be thematic in it. And so it's like, it was a saying that my professor told me when we were like analyzing Mozart. It's like, look, he would always do the same thing, but never the same way.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, being as creative as you can with what you got. And so, yeah, I feel like the way I arrange, man, that's such like a deep, like a broad question, because there's so many things to talk about. Did you want to talk about like arranging like in general, or like arranging for like a big band, or how I arrange?
Let's go with what you did for Preamble. So what was your process for arranging tunes in this kind of trio format?
So that was like, I feel like arranging for a trio is an art in itself, because with the amount of, you want to think about how many people, how many instruments you have and the sounds you have available, and and a lot of that just kind of comes through experimenting. I don't have a bass or a drums to experiment on, but for the most part, I did want it to have like kind of a straight ahead feel, to some extent, with like just the sound of a jazz trio. But the way I did this was, I tried my a lot of my arrangements were like a messy process, in that sometimes I would start with the melody and then work my way with harmony, or sometimes I would start with a harmony and work my way with a melody. Sometimes I would just start with a rhythmic figure and kind of trial and error, notes and harmony on that. But for the most part, I tried to make each arrangement a little different in the scope of the album, so that it wasn't all the same, but it's still kind of, it all blends together at in the whole album thing. I don't know if I'm answering the question.
No, this is all great. I mean, I really, again, like, I haven't done a whole lot of arranging yet, so I wasn't really sure what to ask, but it's something I want to pursue.
We can talk about Danny Boy, because that's one that like I definitely did. It's not really, it's one that I kind of worked on quite a bit, and Danny Boy is I mean, I'm sure you've heard the tune. It's all, in the music world they call it diatonic, right? It's all like in one key. If you think about it in the key of C major, it's all white notes and not a single black note will be played. And so in that process, it's like, how can I be creative with just a very diatonic melody? And so I would explore, based on the knowledge of what I have of like, just what I've learned and what I know, I would explore different sound. It was honestly a lot of trial and error. But the way I arrange is I have big arrival spots. Like, I know wherever the melody ends, that's kind of a resolution point. And so I would, sometimes start there and work backwards. And then in the process, I would figure out like, these notes would fit better. This sound would fit better here because it's going to lead to my arrival spot. And so the way I arrange is I'll have big arrival spots that I want to get to, and I usually work backwards on that. So I'll usually have like my beginning chord, but then like, if I know I'm going to end the song, like this is the last note of the song I'm going to end on, I know what chord or what voicing I want to end on, but I don't know how to get to that. And so trying to make it sound spontaneous but also very perfectly crafted is the struggle when arranging. You don't want it to sound like a textbook, but you also want it to sound like good music, right? You don't want it to sound forced or like a technical exercise. And so I kind of try to I'll do like for a 4-bar phrase, I'll do 4 different variations of it. In this case, Danny Boy, I did the first 4 bars of the melody, and I did 4 different versions of it, and like they were all different chords and like different voice leading ideas. and I found out, like what, and I would think at the end, like I have these 4 different variations of like chords or inner voice stuff going on. What's going to fit better in the vibe of what I want to go for? Yeah. And so I'll just kind of sit on that for a while and then think what I might want. But then in that process, it's like you've already found 4 different ways to play that 4-bar phrase. So it's like in that, it's like you're not only learning how to arrange, but you're also learning how to be thematic, which kind of goes back to what we're talking about. Yeah. And how to always to play the same but never the same way, type of thing. But yeah, the way I usually arrange is, I like to think of this a lot. I like to think of outer voices. I do outer voices a lot. I will like play the melody and the bass, and then I will fill in the chord later based on the voice leading. Okay. Yeah, one of my composition teachers in my undergrad told me, he's like, we're going to teach you how to learn counterpoint the dirty way. And so literally all he did was he'd get a Bach chorale, he would give me a melody, and he would put a blank bass, staff in the bottom, and he would say, write a bass line in the style of Bach. And I mean, I could go to like the Bach, library and try to find that one chorale of like the hundreds and thousands of pieces he's written, but that's so much work, and that's not being true to yourself. But anyways, yeah, he would give me a Bach melody, like a soprano line, and he would say, write me down, write a bass line in the style that Bach would write it. So my homework was going and learning and that's how I learned counterpoint. I mean, I also took a class on it, but like he taught it to me that way, which to me was so much more fulfilling because you're working for it. You know what I mean? Right. And so that was one of the things that I definitely did, love about the lessons. And so that's the same way I approach like jazz arranging. I will, most often than not, there's times where it changes a little bit. But I like to think about outer voices the whole time because that's kind of how every composer thinks, for the most part, thinks about how they thinks about like their composition process, and it's different for everybody. But that's one of the ways that I will work with arranging and composing. I'll write a melody, and then I'll like try to figure out a bass movement, and then in that process, I don't know what chords are going to be played. But I do know that this is kind of the sound that I'm going for, just bass and melody, and then I will fill in the chords later, and that's essentially what Bach did. He would just worry about melody and the bass, and then as a result, he was, because you get a vertical structure because he's thinking more horizontally. So, and if you look at Bach's pieces, it's like he's thinking. His idea of music is like he's thinking horizontally, from like left to right. He's not thinking chord. So it's like the vertical structure is the result of the horizontal process. Okay, that makes sense. Does that make sense? And so it's hard to like articulate, that thought. But anyways, yeah. So it's like you're thinking so linearly, horizontally, that sometimes sometimes chords might not make sense or look weird, but because you're so focused on the line. Like the motion is what makes it work. Exactly. The forward motion is what's giving it that drive, that power. Right. And then I would worry about filling in the inner voices later. You listen to Waltz for Debbie, that's essentially kind of what it is. It's like outer voices and then inner voices on that. And so yeah, that's one way I arrange. That's one way I approach arranging. That's the one I'm probably most comfortable with. But there's so many different styles and approaches. It's like there's no wrong way. And at the end of the day, it's like the common listener, they're not going to be like, oh, that's a counterpoint. Right. He was influenced by counterpoint because they're not thinking that. They're just thinking it's like, you want to make good music. Is this a good melodies? Are they playing good time? Is the band swinging, or is the band sounding good? Like that's really what it boils down to at the end of the day. Yeah. And so like us as musicians, I feel like we get so stuck looking at the little details, which are important too, right? But we don't take a look like at the big picture of things. And so a part of this album process, the hard part was trying to get out of like the whole theory and and just trying to let the music represent itself without letting the listener know, like, oh, look at me showing off my counterpoint.
Right.
That's not the purpose of it.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, that's one way I approach arranging.
Do you tend to go from the keyboard to the computer, or are you only in the computer, or do you use paper?
I stay on the keyboard as long as possible. And this is something that actually Russell Haight suggested, and that I like actually was doing for a while, because I was like, before I did jazz seriously, I was like in like the music making industry, where I would just use GarageBand, like and connect my keyboard and like make beats. But yeah, when I arrange so that I can get like the full sound of how I really want it, I will write down the part, like I will just play the parts on the piano and record them, and then like write a bass line, and I will save the writing for later. Like that is the last step in the process that I'll do it. Like it's all about the music first, because the paper, it just helps make sense of what you're writing. That's all it is. It's it's like you said, it's like grammar, like notes, lines, ledger lines. It's all grammar. It's just a way to make sense of the music that you hear. But ultimately, it's the music that matters, right? And so I will save like the writing to the very end once I get the sound that I want, if that makes sense.
Great. And
so that's my approach, and that's probably something you'll hear along the lines, when you're taking that class.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I had to take a classical band arranging in my undergrad, and I really enjoyed that. And I actually I arranged a marching band show last summer for a school.
Nice.
And it was fun, but I'm excited to pursue this within the jazz world.
It's great.
Do some big band stuff, some stuff for my own group.
And it's not that far. Like it's not disconnected from classical arranging. It's like I said, it's like, to me, it's all the same thing. It's like good music is good music. It's just the note choices you use and the rhythmic construction of what you're writing.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Well, Preamble is available now.
It is available now on CD, and it will be available August 1st on all streaming, on all digital streaming, and if I'm not mistaken, available for digital download as well.
Great. I'll include links in the description for all that. Of course.
I'm in the process of my web developers working on my website, and so in my website you'll be able to, there'll be a link to where you can order online, and then I'll be more than glad to ship it out there.
Cool. I'll be sure to grab that from you. You have any last thoughts, or are you good?
I feel great. I am good.
Great.
Thanks for bringing me on, John. I appreciate that.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of good knowledge. I wish you luck at UNC.
Of course. Thank you so
next chapter of your life. We're looking forward to the next record.
Oh wow, okay. not even in mine yet, but it's in the works.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, I'm gonna take a brief pause, and then I'll come back with some instructions on how to enter yourself for the Preamble giveaway. So thanks again, David.
All right. Thank you so much.
See ya. Okay, we are back from our break that you didn't even notice. Man, what a great conversation with David. David, thanks. If you're listening, thanks again for coming on. So I just wanted to take a couple seconds to explain how this entry for the Preamble CD giveaway is going to work. Two things need to happen. First thing, you need to be subscribed to my channel on YouTube, which is how you're listening right now. And the second way is going to be by in the comment section entering the words Preamble, Preamble. So you need to be subscribed, and you need to type in the word in the comment section, Preamble. This should be uploaded. Today is Tuesday. Should be uploaded today. We're just going to put a timer for a week on it. So whatever day this actually hits YouTube, the timer will be a week, and then I will pick a name at random or a user at random, and I'll contact you and figure out how to get you this awesome CD. So once again, you need to subscribe, and you need to comment Preamble. If one of those things isn't there, you're not going to be eligible. I guess I'll do a little cross-referencing on the comments versus subscribers or whatever. But anyways, thank you all for listening. This is the 2-5 Podcast. I'm your host, John Henrick, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.